Eileen Wang never expected that her custom silk collar and stunning silver cross would become the focal point of a federal takedown. But Senator Marco Rubio was about to strip away her curated mask of victimhood. The camera shutters are clicking like a swarm of digital locusts, drowning out the shallow, frantic breathing of the woman in the witness chair. That is a stunning silver cross around your neck, Mayor Wang. Really, it's a shame. It's the only honest thing you've worn in 20 years. The voice is cold, dripping with the kind of Florida sun that burns instead of warms. Marco Rubio leans closely into the microphone, his eyes locked onto the shimmering jewelry that sits atop the silk collar of a woman who just sold out the American dream for a paycheck from Beijing. I am a public servant who has dedicated her life to the diversity of Arcadia, and I will not have my faith questioned by a man seeking a headline. Eileen Wang grips the edge of the mahogany table, her knuckles turning white, her voice trembling with the rehearsed outrage of the California elite. Faith, Eileen? You don't have faith, you have a script. Rubio tosses a thick manila folder onto the desk, the sound echoing through the Senate chamber like a gavel hitting a coffin. In 2021, while you were pretending to be a champion for the Chinese-American community, you were actually taking dictation from the People's Republic of China. That is an outrageous lie. We provided a news source, a platform for marginalized voices. A platform? Rubio leans forward, his shadow stretching across her face, until the light from the chandeliers is blocked out. You ran a bogus website that was nothing more than a digital megaphone for CCP propaganda. You sat in your office, perhaps touching that very cross, and you posted that there is no genocide in Xinjiang. You told the world there is no such thing as forced labor, that it was all just a rumor, to defame your leaders in the East. The woman's hand flies to her throat, her fingers tangling in the chain of the cross as the air in the room turns to ice. I shared articles that offered a different perspective. We believe in a global conversation. A global conversation? Let's talk about your private ones, then. Rubio flips open the folder, his finger tracing a line of text that carries the weight of a 10-year prison sentence. The feds have the logs, Eileen. They have the messages where Chinese officials told you exactly which paragraphs to edit to make them look good. And when they messaged you to say, "So fast, thank you everyone," what was your response? The silence in the gallery is so heavy, you can hear the sweat beads forming on the witness's forehead. I was being polite to a source. It was professional courtesy. You said, "Thank you, leader." The words hang in the air like a noose. You called a communist handler leader while you were drawing a salary from the taxpayers of Arcadia, California. This is a witch hunt. You are targeting me because I represent a bridge between cultures. No, Eileen. We're targeting you because you're a spy who pled guilty to being an illegal agent of a hostile foreign power. Rubio stands up, the full height of the United States Senate behind him, looking down at the broken remains of a deep state operative. For 6 years, your leaders banned me from stepping foot in China because I dared to tell the truth about their slave labor camps. They blacklisted me, they sanctioned me, and they used puppets like you to tell the world I was the villain. He reaches into his breast pocket and pulls out a small, gold-embossed envelope. But here is the irony that's going to haunt you in your cell. In exactly 4 hours, I am boarding Air Force One with President Trump. The woman's jaw drops, her eyes darting toward the exits, as if she expects her handlers to burst through the doors and save her. President Trump made a last-minute call this morning to put me on that plane. We are flying straight into Beijing, violating every petty sanction your handlers ever placed on me. And do you know what the CCP did when they found out the Secretary of State was coming? Whether they liked it or not, they would never allow it. They have principles. They crumbled, Eileen. They folded like a cheap card table. Rubio leans down, his voice dropping to a whisper that sounds like a death knell. They aren't coming for you. They're busy rolling out the red carpet for me. They waived the restrictions, they're preparing the honors, and they've already forgotten you ever existed. The mayor of Arcadia looks down at her hands, the wedding ring of her fiancé, another confessed spy, glinting in the light. I did everything they asked. I was fast. I was loyal. You were a disposable asset. And you just got disposed of. Rubio snaps the folder shut and looks at the bailiff with a flick of his wrist. Take her away. She's got a date with a $4 million fine and a very long stay in a very small room. The red carpet is for patriots, Eileen. The orange jumpsuits are for the help. The air in the hearing room didn't just feel cold. It felt like the inside of a meat locker, where the only thing being carved up was the truth. Eileen Wang didn't just speak, she performed a ritual of victimhood, a dance of distraction that the left has been rehearsing in the halls of power for decades. She leaned into the microphone, her body trembling with a curated, cinematic fragility that would have earned her a standing ovation in any theater on Broadway. What we are witnessing here today is not a pursuit of justice, Senator Rubio, but a modern-day Salem. The words dripped with a manufactured sorrow, each syllable designed to vibrate with the pain of an entire continent. You are leading a high-tech witch hunt against a woman who dared to break the glass ceiling in a city that for too long was silenced. She paused, her eyes welling up with a shimmer of moisture that caught the overhead lights with surgical precision. Is this the America you want? Where an Asian American woman is hauled before a committee to be crucified for the crime of fostering community dialogue? Her voice broke on the word crucified. A subtle but sharp nod to the silver cross that still hung stubbornly against her silk collar. Marco Rubio didn't move a muscle, his face a mask of granite that had seen this play 1,000 times before. He let the silence stretch out, allowing her performance to hang in the air until it began to smell rotten. It was a witch hunt, Eileen? That's a very colorful choice of words for a woman who just signed a federal plea agreement. His voice was a low, dangerous rumble, the sound of a predator watching a cornered animal try to explain its way out of a trap. I didn't realize the Salem trials involved the defendants admitting to being illegal agents of a foreign regime in writing. He didn't look at her. He looked at the next page of the dossier, his fingers moving with a slow, deliberate rhythm that felt like the ticking of a clock. But please, don't let the facts interrupt your monologue. I'm sure the cameras at the back are getting your best side. Wang's eyes flashed with a sudden, jagged heat, the mask of the grieving victim slipping just enough to reveal the cold ambition underneath. You speak of facts, but all I hear are the echoes of a movement built on xenophobia and the fear of a changing world. She threw her shoulders back, her posture suddenly rigid, the image of a defiant martyr ready to burn for the cause of diversity. My website, the platform you call bogus, was a sanctuary for people who don't see themselves reflected in your narrow nationalist vision of America. We provided a bridge for immigrants to understand their new home, to feel a sense of belonging in a country that often treats them like intruders. If that makes me an agent of influence in your eyes, then perhaps it is your eyes that are the problem. Senator, not my heart. She was leaning so far into the mic now that her breath was a sharp, percussive hiss against the metal. You attack me because I am a successful woman of color, and because my community actually trusts me more than they trust your rhetoric. Across the room, the narrator watched the way the sunlight hit the dust motes, the tiny particles of DC history dancing in the air like forgotten promises. It's a classic move, isn't it? When the treason is exposed, pull the race card and hope the light is too blinding for anyone to see the handcuffs. Rubio finally looked up, a faint, mocking smirk playing at the corner of his mouth, the look of a man who had just heard a joke had told himself 1,000,000 times. It's fascinating, Eileen, How you can stand there and talk about belonging while you were actively helping a regime that puts people in cages. You talk about sanctuary for your community, yet you were the one feeding them the very poison that keeps them shackled to a communist lie. Does belonging in your world mean belonging to the CCP? Because that's the only community I see reflected in your bank statements. That is a libelous insinuation, and you know it. Wang's voice rose to a shrill, piercing pitch that made the stenographer flinch. The funding was for cultural exchange, for the promotion of harmony. You are using my heritage as a weapon to stir up the MAGA base. You want to talk about harmony? Rubio's hands slammed down on the mahogany table, the sound echoing like a thunderclap in the hallowed hall. Let's talk about the harmony of a silenced people. Let's talk about the harmony of a labor camp where the only sound is the rhythmic clicking of machines. You used the word stigma in your opening remarks. You said you were fighting the stigma against your people, but the only stigma I see here is the one you branded onto the office of mayor by turning it into an outpost for Beijing. He flipped another page, the sound of the paper sharp and final. You claim you were protecting your community from discrimination, but your own messages show you were discriminating against the truth. When your handlers told you to delete paragraphs about the torture of dissidents, did you think about diversity then? Or were you too busy thinking about the praise you were getting for being a fast and loyal student of the party? Wang's chest was heaving now, her eyes darting toward the gallery, looking for a friendly face, a nod from the media, anything to validate her narrative. I was a bridge. You cannot understand the complexity of navigating two worlds. I understand treason just fine, Eileen. It doesn't require a translator. Rubio leaned back, his chair creaking with a sound that felt like a mocking laugh. You see, the problem with a victim shield is that it only works when the person holding it hasn't already sold the shield to the enemy. You spent 20 years pretending to fight for the marginalized while you were actually building a fortress for the oppressors. And you did it all under the banner of inclusion. It's the ultimate leftist grift, isn't it? Convince everyone you're a martyr so they don't notice you're the one holding the keys to the cell. I am a mother, a leader, and a woman who has earned every vote she ever received. She was shouting now, her composure shattering like glass on the stone floor. You can try to drown me in your MAGA conspiracy theories, but the people know who I am. Oh, the people definitely know who you are now, Eileen. The Department of Justice made sure of that. Rubio's eyes were like ice, cold and unyielding, reflecting the hollow desperation of the woman across from him. The diversity you preached was just a coat of paint on a crumbling wall of lies. You used the language of the left to camouflage the actions of a spy, and the most disgusting part of it all, you wore that cross while you did it. You invoked the name of God to protect a regime that would arrest you for saying that name in public. He leaned forward one last time, his voice dropping to a whisper that felt like a cold wind through a graveyard. The witch hunt is over, Eileen. The only thing left is the fire you built for yourself. And as for your song of the victim, nobody's buying the record anymore. He looked at the clock on the wall, the steady movement of the second hand marking the end of an era. We're done talking about your feelings and your heritage. We're going to talk about your crimes, because in the real America, the one you tried to betray, facts don't care about your diversity metrics. The narrator's voice came back, a low, gritty commentary over the visual of Wang slumped in her chair. Look at her, the victim without a script, the leader without a follower. She thought the swamp would protect her forever, that the race card was an infinite pass to treason. But she forgot one thing: the truth doesn't need a bridge. It just needs a light. And Rubio just turned on the sun. The sound of a heavy manila folder hitting the mahogany table echoes like a gunshot in a canyon, a violent punctuation mark that ends the debate over feelings and begins the trial of facts. Let's stop talking about your heart, Eileen, and start talking about your server logs. Marco Rubio's voice is low, steady, and stripped of all diplomatic patience. For 22 years, from the dawn of the new millennium in 2000 until you were finally caught in 2022, you ran a digital ghost ship. He leans over the dais, his eyes narrowing as he watches the former mayor flinch at the sound of the folder. You called it an independent news source for the Chinese-American community. You marketed it as a bridge, a place for cultural connection and local updates. But we both know that in the dark corners of the internet, it was a laundering machine for the CCP's filth. He pulls a single laminated page from the folder and holds it up as if it were contaminated. The world was waking up to the horrors of the Xinjiang province. The screams of millions of Uyghurs were finally reaching the ears of the international community. And what did Mayor Eileen Wang have to say to her constituents on her independent platform? Rubio adjusts his glasses, his eyes scanning the page with a look of pure, unadulterated disgust. I'll read it for you since I'm sure you've conveniently forgotten your own prose. There is no genocide in Xinjiang. There is no such thing as forced labor in any production activity, including cotton production. Spreading such rumors is to defame China. He drops the paper back onto the table, the weight of the lie settling like lead in the air between them. Those aren't the words of a journalist, Eileen. Those are the words of a mouthpiece for a regime that harvests organs and erases cultures. Eileen Wang stares at the paper, her mouth opening and closing like a fish pulled from the water. The rehearsed charisma of a California politician evaporating in real time. Senator, that was an editorial. A contribution from a member of the community. In a democracy, we don't censor voices just because they are unpopular or go against the grain of the mainstream narrative. We believe in a marketplace of ideas, and my website was simply a reflection of the diverse opinions within our diaspora. Diversity? Rubio's laugh is a short, sharp bark that contains no joy. Is that what we're calling it now? Laundering the talking points of a genocidal dictatorship is just diversity of opinion? If a website in 1944 was claiming there were no camps in Poland, would you call that a diverse perspective? Or would you call it a war crime? He leans closer, his presence so overwhelming that the woman in the chair seems to shrink, her expensive silk suit suddenly looking like a cheap costume. You sat there in Arcadia, breathing American air and protected by the American flag, while you told your readers that the slaves in the cotton fields didn't exist. You told them that the cameras, the wire, the shaven heads, and the cattle cars were all just rumors meant to defame your true leaders in Beijing. The First Amendment was designed to protect the truth from the government, Eileen, not to protect a foreign government's lies from the truth. Wang's upper lip begins to glisten with a fine sheen of sweat, the camera zoom catching the moment her composure begins to liquefy. The First Amendment applies to everyone, Senator. You cannot pick and choose who gets to speak based on your political agenda. The left always talks about fake news and misinformation. But the moment we catch one of your own running a propaganda mill for a communist regime, suddenly you're the champions of absolute free speech. She tries to straighten her back, reaching for that jagged, defensive arrogance that the swamp uses as a last resort. I am a publisher. I am entitled to curate content that resonates with my audience. If they don't want to hear your warmongering rhetoric about Xinjiang, that is their right. Your audience? Rubio's hand slams back down on the table, the water in Wang's glass jumping at the impact. Your audience was being fed a steady diet of CCP-approved sludge designed to keep them loyal to the party and suspicious of the country they now call home. This wasn't a curation, Eileen. This was an operation. For 22 years, you were the digital gatekeeper for a foreign adversary right in the heart of California. You didn't just share an article. You built a fake news empire on the bodies of the oppressed. He turns to the committee, his voice rising, addressing the silent gallery as much as the woman in front of him. This is how the sausage is made, folks. This is the deep state at the local level. They don't always wear uniforms. Sometimes they wear crosses and silk suits and sit on city councils. They use our own laws, our own values of diversity and inclusion, as a Trojan horse to smuggle in the propaganda of our enemies. She sat there for 2 decades laundering the lies of the CCP, and the media in this country called her a trailblazer. He turns back to Wang, his eyes like 2 cold gray stones. Tell me, Eileen, when you wrote that there was no forced labor in the cotton fields, did you believe it? Or did you just know that the check from your source wouldn't clear if you told the truth? Wang fumbles with her necklace, the silver cross spinning frantically between her trembling fingers. I am not responsible for the geopolitical reality of other nations. I am a local official. Then why were you publishing international propaganda on a local community site? Why was a mayor in California so concerned with the reputation of the cotton industry in Xinjiang? Unless, of course, the local interests you were serving weren't in California at all. Rubio leans back, his chair creaking with a sound like a rusty hinge on a prison cell. The left loves to talk about foreign interference in our elections, don't they? They've spent years chasing ghosts and shadows to try and take down a president they hate. But here you are, a tangible, living, breathing example of foreign interference, sitting right in the mayor's chair, an illegal agent running a propaganda site for 22 years, and the mainstream media didn't say a word. In fact, they praised you. They gave you awards. They held you up as a model of the new America. Is that because they didn't know, Eileen? Or is it because they liked what you were saying? Wang's voice is now a shrill, desperate rasp, the sound of a woman who knows the bridge behind her has already been burned. You are twisting the mission of my life into something ugly. I was building a community. You were building an outpost. Eileen, a digital colony for the CCP, and you did it by weaponizing the very things that make America great. Our openness, our tolerance, and our respect for different voices. You took those virtues and you twisted them into a shield for a regime that has no respect for any of them. He picks up the 2021 article again, waving it in the air like a bloody rag. This isn't an opinion. It's a denial of a crime against humanity. And you published it while you were an elected official in the United States. You didn't just fail your constituents. You betrayed the very concept of the truth. The narrator's voice cuts in, a gritty, cynical whisper that sounds like the ghost of a real journalist. Look at her. The sweat is breaking through the $300 foundation now. The independent journalist who couldn't find the truth if it was standing in front of her with a federal subpoena. She thinks if she says First Amendment enough times, the ghost of the CCP will magically disappear. But Rubio isn't buying the ticket to her victimhood tour. Hess showing the world the plumbing of the swamp and its overflowing with Beijing's sewage. Rubio sets the paper down, his eyes never leaving hers. The era of dirty media, masquerading as community service, is over. Mayor, we've seen the logs, we've seen the edits, we've seen the money, and we're just getting started. The humidity in the hearing room had become a physical presence, a damp weight that made the high-backed leather chairs feel like cages. Marco Rubio didn't just look at the woman across from him. He looked through the layers of expensive foundation and the carefully curated community leader persona. Let's pull back the curtain on the editorial process at your little news outlet, Eileen. His voice was a low, dangerous hum, the sound of a storm front moving across the Everglades. Because for 20 years, you told the people of Arcadia that you were their voice, their independent source of truth. But the federal plea agreement tells a much darker, much more intimate story about who was really holding the pen. He leaned forward, his hands flat on the mahogany das, his fingers beginning a slow, rhythmic tap against the wood. Tap, tap, tap. It wasn't just about sharing a few articles or fostering dialogue with international partners, was it? It was about a digital leash that stretched all the way from your mayor's office back to the darkened rooms of the People's Republic of China. He reached for a stack of time-stamped transcripts, the paper crinkling with a sound like dry autumn leaves. We have the WeChat chat logs, Eileen, the back and forth between a sitting American mayor and the intelligence officers of a hostile foreign power. Eileen Wang reached up, her fingers fluttering like trapped birds as she smoothed a stray hair back into her perfectly coiffed bob. Senator, those were group chats with media consultants. We were discussing content optimization for a global audience. Her voice was a frantic, high-pitched warble, the sound of a violin string about to snap under the pressure. It is common practice in the digital age to coordinate with international media partners to ensure cultural accuracy. Cultural accuracy? Is that what you call it when a foreign government tells you exactly which paragraph to delete from a story about their own human rights abuses? Rubio pulled a page from the stack and held it up, his eyes scanning the text with a look of cold, calculated precision. June 2021, you had a draft ready to go about the development of the Western provinces. A message comes in from your consultant in Beijing. Not a suggestion, Eileen, but a directive. Remove the third paragraph. Change the wording about the labor camps to vocational training centers. Make sure the tone is celebratory. And what did you do, Mayor? Did you stand up for the independence of the American press? Did you tell them to go to hell? Wang's hand went back to her hair, her fingers twisting a lock of it with a frantic, repetitive motion that betrayed the absolute collapse of her composure. I was managing a complex relationship. We wanted to maintain access. We didn't want to jeopardize the flow of information. The only thing flowing was the propaganda, and you were the one who opened the tap. Rubio's fingers sped up the tapping, becoming a staccato drumbeat that echoed off the high ceilings. The feds say the Chinese officials had fine control over your website. They were messaging you about specific edits, specific words, all to make the PRC look good. You weren't an editor. You were a puppet. And they were pulling the strings through an encrypted app on your phone. He flipped to another page, his eyes locking onto a specific exchange that made the corners of his mouth twitch with a mocking, bitter smile. Let's talk about the speed of your service, Eileen, because even your handlers were impressed by how quickly you betrayed your own country. After you posted one of their pro-Beijing essays, the one denying the genocide, a message popped up in the group chat. A Chinese official messaged you and the others so fast. Thank you, everyone. The silence that followed was absolute. A void in the room that seemed to swallow the very light from the chandeliers. They were congratulating you, Eileen, like a trainer giving a treat to a dog that just performed a trick. The woman who represented the people of an American city was being praised by communist spies for how fast she could spread their lies. Wang leaned toward the microphone, her eyes glistening with a desperate, watery sheen as she tried to summon one last shred of her victim narrative. You are taking a polite exchange out of context. We were working on a deadline. So fast was a comment on the technical upload, but not the content. We were trying to compete in a 24-hour news cycle. It was about efficiency, not ideology. Rubio stopped tapping. The sudden silence was more jarring than the noise had been. Efficiency? You were efficient at being an illegal agent. I'll give you that. You were efficient at taking directives from a government that wants to replace us, that wants to see the downfall of the United States. While you were sitting on the Arcadia City Council, while you were being sworn in as mayor, You were executing the orders of a regime that doesn't play fair. He stood up, the movement slow and deliberate, the physical embodiment of the America First movement finally standing its ground. This is how the sausage is made in the swamp, folks. This is the reality of the deep state at your local town hall. They don't just invade us with armies. They invade us with investments and consultants and news sources that are bought and paid for in Beijing. They find people like you, people who are so hungry for status, so desperate to be seen as inclusive and global, that they'll sell their own neighbor for a thank you from a communist leader. He pointed a finger at the transcripts on the table, his voice rising to a sharp, accusing crescendo. Every word on that website was a brick in the wall they are building to shut out the truth. Every edit you made, every paragraph you deleted on their orders was an act of sabotage against the American people. And the most sickening part? You did it all with a smile and a cross around your neck, while your fiancé was doing the exact same thing in the shadows. Wang's hand dropped from her hair, her arm falling limply to her side as the last of her strength seemed to drain out of her. Mike was just trying to help the business. What he didn't know, we were just trying to survive. Her voice was a broken whisper, the sound of a woman who had finally realized that her leaders weren't coming to save her. Your fiancé pled guilty to espionage charges on behalf of China, Eileen. Birds of a feather. This wasn't a family business, it was a family of spies operating right in the heart of California. You were the public face, the respectable politician, while the gears of the CCP were grinding away behind the scenes. Rubio gathered his papers, the sharp snap of the folder closing sounding like the final click of a prison cell door. The people of this country are tired being told that their concerns are conspiracy theories, while people like you are taking orders from Beijing. They are tired of a media that looks the other way, while the deep state sells our future to the highest bidder. He looked down at her one last time, his eyes devoid of anything but a cold, patriotic satisfaction. You thought you were so clever, didn't you? So fast, so efficient, such a good little agent, but you forgot that in this country, we still have people who can read the logs. We still have people who aren't afraid to call a spy a spy. The sausage is on the table now, Eileen, and it's a lot more than the American people can stomach. Enjoy the prison food. I hear they don't use WeChat in the federal pen. He turned and walked away, his footsteps steady and rhythmic, leaving the woman alone in the glare of the lights, a broken tool in a drained swamp. The air in the room didn't just feel heavy, it felt final, like the slamming of a vault door in the middle of a desert. The silence that followed Marco Rubio's last question was a jagged, ugly thing that tore at the last of Eileen Wang's composure. Let's talk about your vocabulary, Eileen, because in the circles you ran in, words had a very specific price tag. Rubio's voice dropped an octave, becoming a low, rhythmic growl that seemed to vibrate the very water in the glass, sitting untouched in front of the witness. When we look at those WeChat logs, we don't just see a woman taking orders. We see a woman who had forgotten what country she was supposed to be leading, because after the PRC officials finished telling you exactly how to polish their image, after they thanked you for being so fast in your betrayal, you didn't just offer a professional acknowledgement. He leaned forward, his eyes burning with a cold, patriotic fire that made the camera flashes seem dim by comparison. You didn't say copy that, or message received, or even a polite no problem. You typed 3 words that should make every citizen of Arcadia and every patriot in this nation feel a cold shiver of pure, unadulterated disgust. You said, and I quote, "Thank you, leader." The words hit the table like lead weights, and for the first time, Eileen Wang's mouth hung open, her rehearsed defense dying in her throat. Tell me, Mayor Wang and I used that title loosely today when you were typing those words. Who exactly were you referring to? Were you referring to the President of the United States, the man sitting behind the resolute desk who actually puts America first? Or was your leader a nameless, faceless communist bureaucrat sitting 10,000 miles away in a darkened office in Beijing? Wang's lower lip began to tremble, a frantic, uncontrollable twitch that no amount of expensive silk or California poise could hide. Senator, it was, it was a term of respect, a cultural nuance. You are overanalyzing a simple translation. Cultural nuance? Eileen, don't insult the intelligence of this committee or the American people listening to this broadcast. Rubio's hand didn't slam the table. This time it just rested there, a heavy, symbolic weight that seemed to anchor the truth in the room. In this country, we don't have leaders in the way your handlers do. We have public servants, and we have the people. But you chose a side, didn't you? You chose to bow down to a regime that demands absolute subservience, and you brought that subservience right into the mayor's office. He let that sink in, watching as Wang's eyes darted desperately toward the back of the room, toward the news cameras she had spent years courting. She looked at the lenses of the mainstream media, her eyes pleading for a friendly spin, for a fact check to save her, for a headline about xenophobia to distract from the treason. But the cameras remained cold, indifferent glass eyes, recording every second of her slow-motion collapse. And it wasn't just you, was it, Eileen? It wasn't just one bad apple in the barrel. It was a regular little rat's nest, right there in your own home, a family of spies living off the blood and sweat of the American taxpayer. Your fiancé, Mike's son, the man you were planning to build a life with, he already took the plea, didn't he? He stood before a judge and admitted to espionage charges on behalf of the People's Republic of China. Birds of a feather, Eileen, or should I say, rats of a sewer? Wang's eyes shut tight, her head bowing as if the weight of the silver cross around her neck had finally become a literal millstone. He was a businessman. He wanted to succeed, and we all just wanted to succeed. Success in America doesn't usually involve selling out your neighbor to a hostile foreign power for 30 pieces of silver and a thank you from a communist handler. You didn't want to succeed, you wanted to infiltrate, and you did it by weaponizing the very diversity and inclusion the left loves to preach. Rubio picked up a pen and began to tap it against the table. A rhythmic, ticking sound that felt like a countdown to a sentencing. You were a team. You were the respectable face of the community while he was working the shadows, both of you executing the same pro-CCP directives. Did you discuss it over dinner, Eileen? Did you talk about which paragraphs to edit while you were planning your wedding? Did you toast to your leader in Beijing while the people of Arcadia were out there working hard, believing their mayor actually cared about their city? The silence from the witness was absolute now, the kind of silence that only comes when the lies have finally run out of places to hide. You are facing 10 years in a federal prison, Eileen. 10 years in a place where they don't care about your cultural nuances or your titles, and a $250,000 fine that I'm sure your leaders in Beijing aren't going to help you pay now that you're useless to them. You were an illegal agent, a tool used to spread propaganda that denied a literal genocide. All so you could feel important in a group chat. He leaned back, his chair creaking with a sound that felt like the final word on the matter. Look at those cameras one more time, Eileen. Go ahead. Look at them. She didn't. She couldn't. Her gaze was fixed on her own trembling hands, her fingers still clutching that silver cross, as if she could pray her way out of a federal indictment. They aren't going to save you. The deep state allies you thought you had in the media are already erasing your name from their guest lists. You're not a trailblazer anymore. You're just another piece of the swamp that's finally been pulled out into the light. The thank you from your leader was the only payment you're ever going to get. and it's not going to buy you a second of freedom. You betrayed your oath, you betrayed your city, and you betrayed the very God you claim to represent with that cross. The family business is closed, Eileen, and the only thing left for you is the bill. Rubio stood up, his height casting a long, dark shadow over the slumped figure of the former mayor, a physical manifestation of a justice that was no longer a conspiracy theory. This isn't just about one city in California anymore. It's about every city where people like you think they can sell us out while we aren't looking. But we are looking now. And the leaders you served are about to watch you disappear. Take her away. She's got a lot of thanking to do in a cell. The air in the room shifts from the electric heat of an interrogation to the heavy, chilling weight of a funeral for a career that never should have existed. Marco Rubio stands up slowly, his movements deliberate, like a man who has finally stepped out from a long, cold shadow into the midday sun. He reaches down, his fingers steady as he fastens the middle button of his navy wool vest, a simple gesture that feels like a soldier buckling his armor before the final charge. Look at me, Eileen. Really, look at me. His voice has dropped, losing the sharp edge of the prosecutor and taking on the resonant, gravelly depth of a man who has lived through the history he's about to recount. 6 years ago, in the summer of 2020, I stood on the floor of the United States Senate, and I spoke a truth that the swamp was too terrified to whisper. I spoke about the screams coming from the western province of Xinjiang. I spoke about the cattle cars, the shaven heads, and the systematic erasure of a human soul in the name of harmony. And do you remember what happened the moment those words left my lips, Mayor? He walks to the edge of the dais, looking down at her, the physical embodiment of a country that has finally stopped apologizing for its existence. The regime you call leader didn't debate me. They didn't offer a different perspective like the ones you peddled on your bogus website. They struck back with the only tool a coward knows. They tried to erase me. China issued sanctions against me as an individual. They placed me on a blacklist alongside Senator Ted Cruz for the high crime of having a conscience. They told the world that Marco Rubio was persona non grata, that I was forbidden from ever stepping foot on Chinese soil again. They thought they could lock me out of the future, that they could isolate a representative of the American people until I faded into political irrelevance. He pauses, the rhythmic ticking of the clock on the wall sounding like the steady march of justice catching up to a traitor. And while I was being barred from the East, while I was being told I was an enemy of their order, where were you, Eileen? You were sitting in a climate-controlled office in Arcadia, California, basking in the glow of the very diversity you were busy murdering. You were climbing the ladder of the deep state, one pro-CCP editorial at a time, using the race card to silence anyone who dared to ask where your funding came from. While I was being sanctioned for defending human rights, you were being celebrated by the leftist elites as a pioneer for the community. You lived in luxury, breathing the air of a free republic, while you worked as a digital janitor for a dictatorship, cleaning up the mess of their genocide so it wouldn't stain the conscience of your donors. I was a senator of the United States, and I couldn't visit a foreign capital because I spoke the truth. But you were a mayor. You were invited to the galas. You were the darling of the mainstream media. They didn't see a spy, they saw a success story that fit their narrative of a post-American world. Eileen Wang's lips are white, her jaw set in a hard, desperate line as she tries to find a crack in the wall of his memory. The world is not as simple as you make it, Senator. There are nuances. There are diplomatic necessities. Nuance? Rubio's laugh is a short, sharp bark that echoes off the marble pillars, a sound of pure, unadulterated cynicism. Is that the word the left uses now for treason? Nuance? Is it nuance to take directives from a regime that harvests organs while you wear a cross and preach about inclusion? Is it a diplomatic necessity to tell your constituents that slave labor doesn't exist while you're planning your next fundraiser with a CCP-linked consultant? For 6 years, that ban remained in effect. 6 years of being told by the experts in D.C. that I was too radical, too confrontational. The elites whispered in the hallways that I had ruined our relationship with Beijing, that I was a relic of a Cold War mindset. They wanted me to apologize. They wanted me to bow. They wanted me to be more like you, Eileen. He reaches out, his hand hovering over the stack of WeChat logs, the paper trail of her soul's sale. They wanted me to be fast and loyal and efficient at ignoring the blood on the cotton. But I waited. I kept my head down. I kept my resolve high. And I waited for the American people to remember who they are. I waited for a leader who didn't view the presidency as a middle management position for a globalist board of directors. He stands taller, the navy fabric of his vest pulling tight across his chest, the visual symbol of a man who no longer has to hide his intentions. And now, here we are. May 2026. The witch hunt you cried about is actually just the light of the morning finally hitting the swamp. The experts who laughed at my sanctions are now looking for new jobs in the private sector. And the regime that thought they could ban me for 6 years, they're about to learn a very expensive lesson in American resilience. You thought the blacklist was a permanent sentence, didn't you? You thought you had won because you were on the right side of the globalist curve. But the wheels of history have turned, Eileen, and they are about to grind your little editorial empire into the dust of a federal prison yard. You chose the leader who offered you praise in a group chat. I chose the country that offers me the right to tell you to your face exactly what you are. He leans down, his voice a whisper that somehow feels louder than a shout. A traitor, a mouthpiece, a disposable piece of communist garbage masquerading as a servant of the people. The history you tried to bury in Xinjiang is the very thing that is now burying you. 6 years of silence is over, Mayor, and I'm just getting warmed up. The narrator's voice cuts through the tension. Gritty and satisfied. Look at him. That's what it looks like when a patriot finally gets to collect the debt. For 6 years, the left laughed, while Rubio was blacklisted by the very regime they were busy making deals with. They watched as the CCP tried to cancel a United States senator, and they didn't say a word because they were too busy taking consulting fees from the same handlers. They thought the New World Order was a done deal, that people like Eileen Wang were the future, and people like Rubio were the past. But they forgot one thing. America doesn't do quiet. We don't do subservient. And we certainly don't forget a betrayal. Wang is sitting there shivering in her silk, realizing that the leaders she thanked so fast have already deleted her number. She was a bridge to nowhere, and the toll is finally due. Rubio turns his gaze to the clock, his eyes clear and focused. 6 years, Eileen. A lot can change in 6 years. In 2020, I was a senator you could ignore. In 2026, I am the Secretary of State you can't escape. The red carpet is being rolled out in Beijing as we speak, and I'm going to walk on it with the weight of every lie you ever told under my boot. Your story is a tragedy of greed and nuance. Mine is a story of waiting for the truth to catch up. And believe me, Mayor, it has caught up. The hum of the Senate chamber's air conditioning seems to sync with the heavy, rhythmic thud of Marco Rubio gathering the folders that hold the charred remains of Eileen Wang's career. He taps the stack against the table, the sharp clack of paper and mahogany sounding like a judge's gavel, finalizing a life sentence. You know, Eileen, as I look at you sitting there, I realize this room is much too small for the judgment that's actually unfolding today. His voice is no longer just addressing a witness, it's a broadcast to the world, resonant with the authority of a man who knows the tide has finally turned. This isn't just about a city council in California anymore, and it's certainly not just about a fake news website that took orders from Beijing. This is about the moment the bluff was called on a global scale. Rubio stands tall, adjusting his cuffs with the precision of a man preparing to board a flight that will change history. For 6 years, your leaders in the CCP thought they held the cards because they banned me, they sanctioned me, and they used people like you to whisper that I was a relic of the past. They thought they could dictate who represents the American people and who gets to speak the truth about their crimes. He leans forward one last time, his gaze piercing through the expensive lighting and the cameras to the very soul of the swamp. But they forgot one thing. They aren't dealing with a manager or a consultant anymore. They are dealing with a president who understands that America first isn't a slogan. It's a mandate to never, ever bow. Just hours ago, while you were likely preparing your victim testimony, a decision was made behind the resolute desk that has sent shockwaves through the halls of the Forbidden City. Rubio pauses, letting the weight of the reveal hang in the air like a lightning bolt before the strike. President Trump didn't just call their bluff. He tore the whole deck of cards in half. In a last-minute decision this morning, the president ordered me to board Air Force One. We aren't just flying. We are flying directly to Beijing for a meeting with the very regime that swore I would never step foot on their soil. Eileen Wang's eyes widen, her mouth slightly ajar, as the world she thought was unshakable begins to disintegrate in front of her. But, the sanctions. They banned you. It's impossible. Her whisper is pathetic, the sound of a puppet realizing the strings have been cut by a force she can't comprehend. Impossible, Eileen? In the deep state world, maybe. In Trump's world, it's just Tuesday. Rubio's smile is razor-sharp. A cold flash of victory that leaves no room for debate. Trump told them, "I don't give a damn who you banned. My Secretary of State is coming, and there isn't a damn thing you can do about it. And do you know what happened, Mayor? Do you know what the mighty CCP did when faced with real, unyielding American strength? They crumbled. They didn't negotiate. They didn't protest. They didn't issue a different perspective on your bogus website. They folded like a cheap card table, waived the sanctions, and tore up every single restriction they had placed on me for 6 years." The narrator's voice cuts in, gritty and triumphant, the sound of a patriot who has seen the light of the morning. Look at the absolute panic on her face. This is the moment the globalist dream dies. She thought she was part of an unstoppable machine, an empire that would eventually swallow the United States through investments and influence. She believed the lie that China was the future and America was just a declining rival. But Rubio just showed her the truth. When America stands tall, the adversaries sit down. The CCP isn't a friendly rival. They are an adversary that only respects one thing, and that thing is power. Rubio begins to slide his files into his briefcase, the metallic click of the latch sounding like a period at the end of a very long sentence. The negotiations haven't even started yet, and already Beijing has handed over an embarrassing, globally humiliating concession. They are preparing the honors for me right now. The man they blacklisted, the man they tried to cancel, the man you were paid to defame. He'll be walking on their carpet with the President of the United States. He turns his head slightly, looking back at her over his shoulder with an expression of pure, unadulterated irony. It's a funny thing, Eileen. While I'm being greeted with honors in Beijing, while I'm representing the interests of the American people on the world stage, you're going to be learning the cultural nuances of a federal prison system. The leaders you thanked so fast in your WeChat groups, they've already forgotten your name. They gave up their principles to let me in the door. You think they're going to lift a finger to help a failed spy in an orange jumpsuit? I was fast. I did what they said. They said I was a bridge. Wang's voice is a broken record, her fingers clutching the silver cross so hard the chain looks like it might snap. You weren't a bridge, Eileen. You were a bluff. And bluffs only work if the person across the table is afraid to see what's in your hand. Trump isn't afraid. He's the one dealing the cards now. Rubio stands at full height, the image of an administration that has finally put America back in the driver's seat. Your leaders are rolling out the red carpet for me, Eileen. It's going to be a beautiful sight. As for you, I hope the orange jumpsuit is your color. It's the only uniform a traitor deserves. The meeting hasn't even taken place, and we've already won. Because we've shown the world that the era of American apology is over. The deep state is draining, the spies are falling, and the adversaries are capitulating. That is what it looks like to put America first. He walks away from the table, his footsteps heavy and confident, leaving the silence of the room to be filled only by the sobbing of a woman who realized too late that she sold her soul to a master who doesn't believe in loyalty. See you in the headlines, Mayor. Or maybe I won't. The narrator's voice fades out over the image of Air Force One ascending into the blue sky. The red carpet is for patriots. The cells are for the rest. And this is just the beginning.